You go ahead and go live.
Welcome to our June the 7th Fall Line Working Group meeting. The first item on the agenda is the welcome and introductions. And I just wanted to briefly allow us to please take like 5 or 10 seconds of silence for the violence that we experienced yesterday and that we're experiencing in the country. So again, I'm asking for a moment of silence. Thank you. And with that, we send our prayers and all to the families affected and leaders affected and community members that are affected by the violence that we see in our communities. With that, Ms. Janice, if you could do a roll call for attendance.
Yes, ma'am. Town of Ashland, Miss Amos. Chesterfield County, Miss Smith.
Here.
Miss Walker.
Here.
Hanover County, Mr. Vadunez.
Here.
Henrico County, Mr. Yor.
Here.
Miss Smidler.
Here.
City of Richmond, Chair Clark.
Here.
Virginia Capitol Trail, Miss Anthony. VDOT, Mr. Riblet.
Here.
Miss McAdory.
Here. Good morning.
Morning. Mr. Fisher. Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Mr. Ariel. Mr. Bushing. And Tri-Cities MPO, Mr. Swakowski.
Here.
Thank you. That concludes roll call for attendance.
Thank you. Next item, do we have any consideration of amendments to the meeting agenda this morning? Great. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, the open public comment period. Do we have any citizens or anyone that have asked to speak or online have any comments been submitted?
We do not.
Awesome. All right, so then go down to some of the beef of our meeting today, and that's the membership recommendations. It is an action to approve the adding the non-voting members. And I will take this over to Chet for talking. I did have a couple questions about the attachment that was with our agenda, but Mr. Parsons, if you would like to, or I can do this item, everyone you like, Chet.
I'm good. I can do it.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Page, I don't know what page it is. The green table in the agenda packet shows a list of existing voting members, and based on our conversation, I guess over the last couple meetings, we've been talking about the possibility of expanding the Fall Line work group, especially now that we're getting into SPAs and construction and really being able to track public interaction and engagement on the Fall Line actually going into the ground. So what staff did was take a look at the membership that was set up by TAC, and then look at attendees over the past year or so of the meetings, as well as our community partners that have an active interest in regional trails. And the recommendation for action is to add a set of non-voting members to the work group that would attend, have regular active roles, but would be non-voting to respect the creation of the Fall Line work group originally by the TAC as a work group to advise the TAC on how to move forward with implementing the Fall Line. So there are four potential members to add. Those are the last four names on the list, including Bike Walk RVA, FOLAR, GRTC, and then the new State Trails Office, which is housed at PDOT. And I have talked with Mr. Hudson about that, and he is interested. So with that, be happy to take any questions or comments. This is, as I said, this was just a staff exercise based on the feedback that we've received from the rest of the work group on membership.
Awesome. Thank you, Chet. At this time, we'll entertain any comments. Does anyone? I know I had a couple of comments.
Sounds good.
I guess one clarification, Madam Chair, the way we've done it, and it doesn't have to be this way, but it was actually the individual members and not the organizations. Like for example,
and that's
right,
kind of
like
where
Brantley is listed there, but if Brantley left the position right now, it would be Brantley leaves and we don't have a backfill, but it could be a seat for Bike Walk RVA if that's the direction you want to go.
Mm-hmm. And that was just one of the things I was going to say with regard to the localities. Like, for example, we have the main member or the voting member, and we haven't really been doing it too much with the fall on. But if we did come up to where we were making recommendations, and with the voting, would organizations like VDOT, would it still be one, although Mark and Liz are listed? The same with Chesterfield, would it be one vote if Chesa and Barb voted, or are each individual, like we're kind of looking at, hold their own vote? So that was my first question, just as we kind of formalize this a little bit more, how we wanted to handle that. And then my second point was just making sure that with the State Trails Office, even on it as a non-voting member, it doesn't preclude us from any state funding with this person. And I'm sure it won't, but I just want to make sure that. So if anybody want to maybe address those two questions, that would be great.
I think the first question, I'm actually not sure. I'd have to go back and look on when we've taken formal votes. This is basically an ad hoc committee that was established by the TAC advisory. So the fall line work group is not in the bylaws of the CBTA or anything. So it's not. We don't have a formal voting structure, but I think this table could be cleaned up if the work group wanted, or the TAC wanted to assign one vote per locality, that kind of thing. I don't think there's anything that would preclude that happening.
Any other members have any comments?
Dorona, this is Barb.
Morning.
How are you?
All right, you.
I was always under the assumption that this subcommittee would, kind of follow the same format as TAC. So Chesterfield would have one vote, and representatives really, the seat is by locality or agency rather than individual people. But those were just assumptions on my part.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make it, because when I saw member, and I was like, wow, we had this many members. And then I'm like, oh, it's double, it's double people listed on there. So yeah, I just think that, yeah, we just clean this sheet up where it just says like, Chesterfield, and then list you and Chesa, because the more we do have, we love Chesa's brain and everybody's brain in it. So definitely not trying to preclude, I'm just trying to make it, so that we understand what we're putting together here. So Chet, I think if we could, clean it up by locality with the representatives there. And then I think and I know that I'm okay with the non-voting members. But again, you did say you talked to Mr. Hudson. Was there any, do we think that there would be any preclusion? Maybe Mark can answer us of, you know, that office's money with him being on our working group.
I want to make sure I understand the question. I don't anticipate that there would be any concern if they were interested in joining, certainly not from our part.
Okay, I just want to make sure, like, you know, we don't have an inside, and then when we try to get money, you know, we're cornering, you know, it's something that precludes us. That's all I,
No, and that would not be a risk at all.
okay, awesome. Any other discussion? We can call the question.
I saw Mr. Ure had his hand up.
I know, and I see his mic on. Yes, sir.
No, I think Mark covered it. I was just going to say it's no different than FHWA being on the TPO TAC from that standpoint, as an analogy.
Thank you.
But while I have the mic, I'll be happy to make a motion.
Yes, sir.
I had one comment before.
And I'm sorry,
I guess
Barb.
I'll second. And then make one more comment. If things start going bad with the voting, I'm gonna suggest we change it to as number of miles, right? The number of votes you get correlates to the number of miles you have.
Okay.
Is that, Madam Chair, is that a friendly amendment to the motion? Because I don't know if I can accept that.
We'll table that for now.
Okay.
Oh, wow. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Ms. Firestone, if you will do a, and now we have,
Voice vote is fine, man.
okay, thank you. I'm like, oh. So all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay or no. Great, hearing no votes, this has been passed. And we welcome our new members to the Fall Line Working Group. And we're so excited for this group that it has so much interest and, you know, participation to help push it all the way to success. And so we're excited about that. So with that, we'll go on to the next item, which is the VDOT update. So either Mr. Riplett or Ms. McAdory on design build phases.
Mark's just going to share his screen real quick, and then I'll run through some slides as soon as it's showing. If someone can just give us a confirmation once you can see it.
Yes, you can see it.
So just a quick update on DB1 and 2. DB1, no big changes. We advertised it back in December. As you know, it was awarded in April of this year, just a month and a half ago or so. We anticipate actual ground, digging to begin this fall. It's really up to the contractor at this point, but that's when we anticipate. For design build 2, there's a couple slides further that we'll talk about the alignment revisions and the environmental concerns, but we are still on target for an RFP advertisement this winter by December of 2023. You want to go to the next slide? And then just a quick update again, I'll go back to the other stuff on DB2 as far as the environmental and the alignment concerns. But for DB3, we're starting to look into that now. This is a list. I actually left off 3 segments, so don't panic. Chesterfield 3B all the way through 2D, and then we're going to meet with you guys if you want to include 2D and E1 or 1E. E1, I guess, D2 and E1. We can do that. So that'll be the next set of conversations we have. Can you go to the next slide for that one? And just so that the next step for DB3, CVTA, obviously you guys put a bunch of regional money on there. So VDOT, we're going to start coordinating with you all on the SPA agreement this summer. And we're looking at following, just like we have with DB1 and 2, this one will be, we were hoping 6 to 9 months. Reality is shaking out more about 12 months after DB2. So that's the schedule for the 3rd section. Mark's going to switch screens over to an update that we were given this morning. So I may be stumbling through it on the environmental, the historic preservation issues we've come across, and also the alignment with VSU. So starting here, we're back to design build 2, the southern section, the one that we're working on PE now. This was the originally proposed alignment, the blue line where it comes in and switchbacks. I guess if you start south, it goes, crosses the river and then switchbacks up. It's a pretty deep incline. You can go to the next slide. Last update, we provided this slide to show you where we have some historic preservation and cultural resources concerns. Every blue dot indicates a positive location for artifacts. So you can see why we took it pretty seriously that the alignment we've been looking at wasn't likely to work. We've been exploring avoidance alternatives to minimize adverse effects. You can go to the next slide. Unless you, did you have something?
Nope.
Okay,
We're good.
just jump in if ready. On the far, I guess would be your right, that sort of light teal was the alignment we looked at, and then also on the far left, the bright green, and then the next slides. I believe most of you saw this last update. But some of the pros and cons for the far left green alignment, some of the pros where we get to repurpose historic train trestle piers, so that's a little cost savings, also kind of cool. Relatively short spans across the river, so it saves a lot of money. And a lot of, you don't have to disrupt as much in the earth. Original plan was to start the Fall Line Trail there anyway, so it matches up with the Appomattox River Trail Smart Scale applications and the design work that's been done thus far, as well as the Patton Park parking lot and trailhead project that was funded. And then it avoids the VOF easement property, and it avoids the need for a two-span, or we can use a two-span bridge. Some of the cons were that there's obviously still some significant archaeological resources there on the southern bank. Protection of archaeological sites, it raises serious concerns about constructability, obviously, additional costs for wetland impacts, and then the piers could be a cost on the engineering side, but maybe upfront might be cost savings. Okay, next slide. This would be the far right, the lighter teal color, pros and cons. Some of the pros were to repurpose historic train trestle piers, because there's piers on that side as well. The piers do appear to be in good shape, so we may not have some of the engineering issues we would have with the piers on the other side. It's a relatively easy bridge as bridges go. It's a short span across the river still. I think they were estimating between 80 and 105 or so feet. It does impact cultural resources, but it's a much smaller impact. It still ties into the Appomattox River Trail more efficiently, meaning they don't have to build as much trail before they can tie in. For the Fall Line Trail, it doesn't really matter where they tie in. I don't think it's going to be north of the river. It avoids the VOF plat, and a significant portion of this alignment's already in the public right of way, so that's going to save us some costs and concerns. Some of the cons is dealing with Dominion with access to their small portion of the alignment, which we've had some success with in the Chickahominy portion. We're going to build on that success, but still it is an obstacle to deal with. Coordinating with the railroad is a challenge and sometimes impacts to the schedule and cost. And then it's likely going to require an additional bridge over the Fleet Branch Creek, or is it canal or creek? I think it's a creek. So that's where we were last time. We've got, this is a little bit more information than last time. You can go to the next slide. So our next steps, again, we're trying to stay on schedule for completing the NEPA document so we don't slow down the progress. The environmental study area has been expanded to encompass both of the new alternatives. We're doing cultural resource and wetland field surveys on both new locations. We're developing a conceptual bridge design. And then VSU, we're still open and just they're aware of all three alignments, and we're still in discussions with them. The one on the left obviously is more impactful for them. And we're dealing with having conversations with their security and just some concerns that they're dealing with going kind of through their campus. And that's kind of where we are. So it's not a whole lot, it's new information, but it's not a whole lot of new decisions from last time. We kind of are still where we were, but with a lot more information. I believe last Mark and I heard we were still looking at the further left, or not the middle, not the further right, but the middle left. Is that?
I believe that's correct. I think that the takeaway message for this morning certainly needs to be that the alignment is still in question right now.
Right.
The good news is a lot more information, better decision making in terms of what that alignment needs to be, and we're really trying to keep Virginia State engaged in those discussions, certainly because they're significantly impacted by what that decision ends up being.
And at this point, I think every month that we go on, this is becoming less true. But at this point, we don't have a significant impact to the overall schedule.
Correct.
I think we've got about 2 or 3 months before it becomes an issue.
And folks are working hard to determine what kind of cost impact any of these alignment decisions might have on the project. So more to come on that.
And that's really all I had. So any questions? We may not be able to answer them, but we can go back and get answers.
Hey, Liz, I got a question.
Sure.
It's on DB2. If you do go with the Aqua alternative, I'm assuming you're going to try to connect it up to the MPO funded project, which ends at Squaw Alley?
Yeah, we are definitely keeping what projects you guys have and trying to make those logical connections. Yes.
Okay. Because that
Thank
may
you for bringing
affect
that
your
up.
line, may affect your final line of what you wind up doing, because I want to make sure that it'll connect to something rather than connect to Dominion Power and not know what to do.
Yeah, so that is the one of the major charges, and we've been FOLARs in a lot of our conversations too, is that we are going to connect to the ART somehow. Like that was the part of the whole master idea, was to connect the two regional trails. So we want to do that.
All right, we have Chet and then Phil and then Mr. Ure.
Just a couple points. I know that I was talking with Heather yesterday, and the governor is down there today, all day for stuff. So there's a lot of interest in Petersburg and that area. So this hopefully could get some traction with the governor's office as things unfold. The other thing I wanted to, for Mark and Liz, on the SPA work, just be aware of CBTA schedule, because we'll need to get to TAC and the authority is not meeting in August. So it's September 29th would probably be the next one that could happen.
That's the September, that'd be the first next full meeting we could get to.
Other than July, but I don't think we're ready for that.
I don't either, but we could shoot for maybe July. Is TAC meeting straight through, or are there any months they're missing?
Tax meet straight through.
Okay.
We don't
okay.
stop.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
So maybe shoot for TAC in August.
Yep. Yeah, we'll try to, I think July TAC is probably a little bit too soon anyway. So we'll shoot for August TAC and hopefully September full.
Okay, and will that just be DB3?
Yeah, because we have the SPA.
Right,
There is no
right.
SPA for DB2. And then, yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Helpful timeline information. Phil?
Yes, thank you, Dorona. You may not be able to answer my question. I had a question about that the green line. Do you know if the piers are going to be, cut down a little bit? That is a very high, those piers are very tall. And I just wondered if that alignment, if it's too high and if they were going to be lowered.
I can't answer you if they'll be lowered, but I can answer you that the height of them is one of the reasons we went away from that early on.
Okay.
And looked at the other piers. So, and I also know, I don't want to say I know, I think there are modification and rehab that can be done to the piers. I'm way out of my lane right now, but so that they could bring them down with part of the rehab. But the main point is that the height of the piers is noticed, and we do consider that sort of something to work around in one way or the other.
Yeah,
Well-
wasn't it being secured to the sides of the piers? That's what the design was, I think, all along, even back in the Chroma days.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was
I don't know.
suspended in the middle of them.
Yeah,
Oh,
the old Chroma design days, even way back years ago. That
There's been quite an evolution from that design, but I don't know. I'm way out of my bridge lane.
And one of the things Scott Fisher is working hard to determine is which of these alignments end up being feasible. Everyone has challenges associated with them. It is literally trying to kind of minimize the issues, maximize the opportunities, and no single alignment of the three that are on the screen right now is free of any issues. So Scott's working real hard with Roy to try and identify which is the best path forward. Again, we do have more information, but we're not there yet.
But Phil, your point about the bridge height, that's similar to like the middle original alignment, would have made more sense to go straight, but the grade is intense. Like nobody not an average cyclist can't get up that, and an average cyclist wouldn't be safe going down that grade. So same thing with the height. You don't want to put people at a height that's unsafe, you know, should a giant gust of wind come by. So great point to raise, and I've taken a note to make sure we remind the team that that's something that we need to consider.
Thank you.
And then Bart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Liz, 2 questions. The first may need to go to Scott or Roy. But moving to design build section 1, which is the Hanover into Henrico piece. Virginia or Dominion Power coordination is needed with that. So has that conversation begun to work on the licensing agreement? My last conversation with them was that we were going to go first, but Dominion has been very unresponsive. We've been waiting on 70% comments for the Longdale phase, which is the section that rides to the Dominion quarter in Henrico. We've been waiting on comments back from them since March 9th. And we've been pinging them. I've pinged their leadership and we've heard nothing. So we're gonna keep trying, but we have to get through those comments and get to 90% before we can work on our licensing agreement with them. And they've indicated to us that they wanted to get our section done first. So
I remember about 6 months ago, we had a very similar situation, and there was a phone call from someone at VDOT to someone at Dominion. It sounds like that we might need to do that again, maybe bubble that up the chain on our end.
maybe.
Are you okay with that?
Hold off for a couple
Okay.
of days. I don't want to get a phone call about from the
Yeah.
leadership saying to do a different approach, which is
Okay.
what at that time, but the different approach isn't working. So
Okay,
so
well, just,
stay tuned and I'll
yeah.
update you.
Okay,
We
just
just
know that we're here for support, because we agreed to help you guys get that done, so
Yep.
let us know what we can do.
Thank you. My second question, any updates on the design guidelines?
Yes, the update is, we have gone ahead and closed the contract with Tool, and we're turning it over to WRA to just close the loop. We just weren't getting what we wanted as a product, which is what has been sort of the major delay. And actually, it's funny you asked today, because just yesterday we had what used to be our weekly meeting that's now monthly, and I went ahead and gave WRA the go-ahead to close the loop on that. And what I mean by close the loop is take the document that we all last had, put it in a final draft form, get it out to the group to yay or one final last yay or nay, and have a final draft. I mean, at this point, as far as, it's DB1, we used obviously all the technical requirements, stuff that we had taken out of the draft anyway. But I think as we get on outside of DB1, I think we're gonna need that. It's gonna be more important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Barb and then Joe.
So I had heard that the train trestle, the green alignment on the left side, the concrete was really in poor shape. So
Okay,
I guess there's a workaround for that if it's still on the table, right?
if it's on the table, there would be, but again, we're gonna get, I don't even know if we have those full answers yet, but let me check before I give you my engineering answer, if you don't want.
Yeah, I got the impression from the rumor I heard that using the train trestle was sort of out. If we did a green alignment,
Okay.
we'd have to have a new bridge.
And jumping on that, Barb, I sat in on the meeting with VSU with the consultant for the visioning, and that's what they were saying, was that they heard that rumor too.
Okay, well, that's one of the, there's a lot of rumors because we haven't made a decision, so I think, I'll go back and pose some of those questions, and as we know more, we'll update the group.
When we were looking at the center alignment, I think some of the benefits that we thought we were going to have with the center alignment also weren't as beneficial as
Yeah.
we had anticipated. So again, some of those rumors could be a combination of what was really coming out of that center alignment, but to Liz's point, we don't have all the answers yet. So.
Mr. Vadunas?
Thank you. Let me see. I just have a few thoughts. They're a little bit disorganized, but I'm just going to just start. So as far as the design of the trail and being consistent, did I hear correctly that we do have technical guides that is going to result in a trail that is consistent from end to end? I mean, in terms of the typical section for the trail itself, the material of the trail, all of those types of things. I guess that would be one aspect. And then we were working with a consultant on developing amenities. And then a third consultant that's working on that we've just hired, engaged I guess it was it the CVTA that engaged a wayfinding consultant. Are those the three pieces? Are there three pieces to this in terms of the overall, what is going to be the overall appearance and design and look and feel of the trail? That's a question.
I wasn't sure who it was to. So the technical guidance that I was referring to was the typical technical guidance that VDOT and any construction project uses to develop, like, AASHTO. Give me some words. What is some of the guidance we use?
This is guidance to be able to offer to any of the projects that are truly independent. As we put all these UPCs together to build the trail. It is not intended, to my knowledge, to be binding. It is a recommendation to say, if we are to have a consistent, unified approach to the trail, this is what that should follow in terms of what this group and others have come together to agree on. That doesn't necessarily mean there may not be individual elements of some of these UPCs that for some reason need to deviate from that.
So the guidelines are what should help you in that, or the designer in that decision-making process when you do need to deviate what's acceptable within the fall line trail.
Right.
So the technical guidance that I first spoke of for DB1 were the actual design criteria and requirements that VDOT gets from AASHTO and gives out in the RFP, which were not the design guidelines that this group had started. The design guidelines that this group had started are, we backed way off on the technical jargon as far as, how many inches depth of pavement based on whatever soil type. That kind of stuff we pulled way back on, and it's more of a fall line trail specific. These are generally the types of, generally we want it 10 feet. It can be more, and it's less on these types of situations, and this is what you would do. It's going to be paved with asphalt if there's it kind of gives you guidelines in the city where it's a more urban feel versus in Hanover. And then I think the amenities and the wayfinding was something that VDOT's not driving. So Chet, maybe you want to speak to those.
Yeah, I'm good with the wayfinding. I understand what's going on there. It was just more of, I'm still not feel like I'm confident in this, but that might be me. Is just, I guess when you ride, is the intent, and I understand that. I think the section down here in Appomattox is a perfect example where, there are going to be reasons to deviate and make exceptions in look, feel, and appearance of the trail. But overall, is the intent that it's going to be, you're not really going to realize you go from, we talked about, borders when you cross into, one jurisdiction from one jurisdiction to the next, that we didn't want it to look like it's an entirely different facility, that there was going to be this continuity overall in design, but recognizing that, all the bridges are not going to look identical. And probably we don't even want that, but we do want this consistent feel so that the user doesn't really know that they have gone from one jurisdiction or from one section to another. It is a cohesive trail. Is that the track that we're on?
Yeah, the way I would
all
answer
these-
that is, Joe, from a trail construction standpoint, the design resource guidelines that VDOT was helping with would give you that same feel throughout from a design perspective, whereas the wayfinding and amenities would give you that same trail feel throughout by signage and types of receptacles or whatever. I think, am I answering your question? Does that help make it more clear?
Well,
I think the intent is absolutely to make it consistent where we can.
Right.
yeah, but understood, and I understand that VDOT is doing that, but we also have, Henrico and
Sure.
Chesterfield and perhaps the city that are also going to independently be developing sections. Are they using the same guidance that you're referring to that is being done on the VDOT administered sections?
Yeah, they'll have to answer that, but that was the intent, as I understand it.
Well, and Joe, I mean, I would just add to it that, that's some of the reason why we're asking where the design guidelines, the final is, because we will need that to move our projects forward.
Right.
At the, here in Richmond and then Chesterfield and Henrico and Hanover. So, yeah, we're hoping to use that. And what I'm hearing is that while DB1 didn't, I guess, specifically use all of what they're going to put in the design guidelines, it is consistent with those. But VDOT can clarify that if
Yeah, what I meant by that, Diron, is the majority of DB1 is the crossing, and the rest of it isn't really like on road. So the deviations don't really exist as much. The deviations that would drive you to use the resource guidelines aren't really there. But certainly, Southern Section, Chesterfield City, and Henrico are going to have to use those guidelines, in my opinion, because you're going to come up to where you need to deviate.
And then, and I don't mean to take up so much time here, but if I could just have just another comment. And this is really kind of a request, is that, you continue to communicate with us so that we can communicate with our leadership and with the public, more importantly, about what is taking place. I don't feel like, I understand the project DB1 is under development right now, but, I would like to know more about when communications are happening with property owners regarding right-of-way, and, prior to breaking ground, that we do receive some advance notice so that we can at least be informed, so that when we get questions about that, we know how to address those. I know you have a contractor that's operating and doing those types of things, but we just somehow we'd like to be kept in the loop, and I don't feel like we're getting maybe the most up-to-date information about some of the specifics that are actually taking place today. I think Todd's comment about Dominion, that's a big part of the right-of-way. The county has a piece of right-of-way. I haven't been contacted, or we haven't been contacted about that recently, and so forth. So that would be my ask.
Sure.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, it's absolutely reasonable.
Thanks,
To your
Dorona.
point,
Thank you.
we did have contact from a property owner in Chesterfield off of Galena yesterday evening that was contacted by an attorney's firm. What appears to be them maybe seeking clients. It did not look to be something that was an official right-of-way agent contacting folks. So, that's happened certainly in other projects as well. And it appears to be happening on the Fall Line Trail project as well. So just, that's an FYI. That didn't have anything to do with us or, the project management on either side. I don't think so. It's out there.
Yeah, and I thank you. And in knowing those types of things, so when we get a call about that, we can clarify with the property owner or refer them to the contractor and just be better able to help citizens
Yep.
with stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with it, but just it's confusing. And I could see how, somebody might be confused by being contacted by an attorney and not really know what's going on.
Joe, that was exactly their question, and the request was, what does this mean? What am I supposed to do with this? So anything that all of us, or any of us frankly, can do to help citizens that way would be the right thing to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Barb, then Todd.
I appreciate, Joe, the comments that you made as far as keeping the county in the loop with citizen contact. That's going to be very important for us as well. So I'm glad that you're kind of getting that framework set up on Design Build One. As far as the Galena thing, that's a big issue for us on all of our road projects. We get the attorneys that want to represent landowners in the right-of-way acquisition process, contacting people way early in advance and kind of brainwashing folks into thinking that we're not going to be working with them on negotiations.
That was exactly what was in their letter.
Yeah. So, I don't know. We've talked about it here in a general way that, when we initiate a project, our first letter to folks should probably include something that tells them that that's likely that they may be hearing from an outside attorney and they are not associated with the project. And we hope that the landowner allows us the opportunity to discuss the right-of-way acquisition with them. I don't know, some sort of just generic thing. And that's really on my list of to-dos. And it's been on my list probably for a year now. So if I finally get off my butt and draft something, I'll share it with you guys, Mark and Liz. And maybe we can include that in some of the fall line stuff that we send out.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Barb.
Design guidelines. I think it's important to recognize that we want the trail to be consistent and not to seem, like when you cross over a county line, go, what? It doesn't look the same. But it's important to recognize we have lots of different feel on the trail. We've got the off-road alignment in Chesterfield. And then we've got the stuff on Route 1 adjacent to a primary road. And then we have things in the city. So it's not going to be consistent. I think the thing that is going to make it consistent is the signing and more of that, the wayfinding kind of stuff. I think that's really what's going to pull it all together. So I'm not overly concerned about the design guidelines. I think I feel like it's more the messaging and the signage that's going to make it consistent.
Thank you. Todd?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll second what Barb said, but Joe, to maybe alleviate some of your concerns about the consistency piece, all of the sections in Henrico that Henrico is administering, even the ones that do not have state or federal funding on them, VDOT is reviewing the plans thoroughly and giving us comments and recommendations for consistency of design for both the off-road sections and the on-road sections. So I think that'll go a long way to have some consistency in the design elements. And to Barb's point, I think the wayfinding will certainly be a big piece of giving us the consistency between jurisdictions. So
Thank you. Great conversation. I think takes us right to our next item, the wayfinding plan update from Chet.
Thank you very much. Phil, are you able to share your screen?
I think I need the other sharing to end.
We're working on it. Give 1 second here.
So Phil's going to pull up a bullet list of information that AB Design has asked for so they can get the project moving forward. It's basic data requests, and we are working on kind of a first take at collecting all this information, but we're very close to getting to the end of what we have access to, and we'll send this out to each of you, because I know each of the jurisdictions that are planning segments have a lot of this information available. So the plan right now is I think everybody has a copy of the proposal and the project methodology. It's 5 phases, with a final report deliverable by August 31st. And this was intentional so that it hopefully folds in with the immediate work I think that Henrico is doing, and possibly others, to get a couple segments in the ground. But basically, just to go quickly through the list, and then we can talk about other things if needed. The first thing they're looking for are logo types to be used in the signage. And this is actually in a vector-based format, so EPS or Illustrator files. I think we have these, but if anybody, we'll send out this list again, and if anybody has more current or better quality files, we would be happy to take those and put them in the folder. And Phil may need help with some of the bigger trails like the US routes and the East Coast Greenway, Appomattox River Trail, Virginia Capitol Trail, and others. So if anybody has access to those, we'll certainly take those as well. I think we have a pretty good head start on it.
I was going to say, Chet, I have a note on here that we have all but the US bicycle route. But to your point, it could be that there are, there's a better VDOT logo or whatever. We may not need all of these, the planner, RVA, CVTA logos. It's up to the committee to decide which logos we would be using, I assume. So, but yes, at this point, US bicycle route is the one I'm missing.
Okay, thanks, Phil. So we are kind of cleaning up and fine-tuning the map, the GIS layers from Bike Ped RVA 2045. There's a lot of other stuff that's in that project that the consultant probably doesn't need to complete the wayfinding plan. So we're putting together a package that will be able to be transferred to them, and I think we've got that kind of in good hands. So the next list is a sample destination list of what could be included in the signage. And I think this is where it'll be good to have some input from the Bike Walk RVA vision plan and some of the initial results of that, if there are other types of destinations or locations. And this is also where we need feedback from each of you, if there are certain locations in each locality that should be highlighted from the signage. In terms of destinations. One of the things that is going to be included in the signage is, go back to having directional information for bike time and walk time to destinations as much as possible. So that's part of the reason why these destinations are important to have. And obviously we can't have 100 things on each sign, but that's something that I think this committee, this work group would take a key role in. The next item there is regulations related to signage. Phil had highlighted these two documents, but others that the committee that the work group might want to include would be helpful. And then I think the last one is the biggest thing. We could certainly do research, but I think with assessors information at each locality, ownership of land, and kind of where probably highlighting a level of difficulty in getting signage placed. in terms of property that is easily accessible or public versus property that would probably take the most work, might help to impact at least the initial plan for how to place signage and spacing and all those kinds of details. I think that's it. And like I said, we're close to having all this information. I see Barb's leaving. Thanks, Barb. We'll be sending this out with a request and very easy highlighted sections and questions for each of you to tackle as we try and get this information together for the consultant. Madam Chair, that's all I have. I don't feel if you had anything else to add, or we can take some questions.
I did want to just say there are things that obviously we may have overlooked in going through this list. I included in the top part, advocacy groups and I don't have sports backers on there. It could be that there are other logos or other groups that need to be included. Obviously, in the destinations, it's up for discussion. I think, what kind of buffer are we talking about? Half a mile? Anyway, I think each locality would probably want to have their own say on what they'd like to highlight the most. So just keep those things in mind, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This looks good to start off with. Let's see what they can what they'll come up with. Do we have any other comments, questions on the wayfinding? And Brantley is typing in the chat, but you're up next. So Brantley, if you want to speak your question, go ahead. Or your comment.
Certainly. Towards the beginning of this, and I would appreciate. I just sent Phil a note. I'd love to see this this overview. I'm not sure I've seen this particular document. But was it 2 years ago? 3 years ago now, when we were working, gosh, that's crazy. When we were working on the renaming and rebranding of the Ashland to Petersburg Trail into the Fall Line, we met with a private branding and marketing firm, Dotted Line, and had participation from all 7 localities to sort of go through the different naming options. And included in that, once we landed on Fall Line, was also I'll say a minimal kind of branding identity, and that includes some type and so some of this I think has already been agreed to from the localities. I think there's a lot of room still to play, but so I'm happy if you don't have access to what we did with Dotted Line, I'm sure I can get my graphic team to send that over. So I guess I'm on the hook to talk about the Fall Line vision plan. And I would like to just give a quick sort of verbal update on what that is. I think I talked about it at the last meeting, and I know a number of y'all were able to come to our charrettes. I really appreciate your time, and that's of course only one element of what we're doing for the Fall Line vision plan. So to sort of level set, what we are hoping to provide with the Fall Line vision plan is essentially a corridor plan that doesn't actually change or specify planning for the trail itself. There's already a corridor study. There's already, the wayfinding is a plan that's happening. The design guide is I guess potentially in process. And so it's really about what amenities, connections, placemaking, and community involvement can be included and really facilitated and catalyzed by the effort of building this trail to get people to use it, to make sure that they understand that it is an amenity in their community, and to think about it more as something that they can use to do things that they already would do. It's not just about biking and walking, but getting to parks or schools or outdoor classrooms or public art and lots of other kinds of things. And so we know that we don't have all the answers, and so we want to make sure that we've surveyed certainly the Friends of the Fall Line and the Fall Line working group members, but also as many community associations and community nonprofit efforts, community groups, and all of our local governments, of course, to put together a vision for the 43 miles to say, wow, it makes a lot of, like, we've been thoughtful in a whole corridor to think, where should certain amenities either go or where do they have the potential to be? Something like a skate park or a trail connector to a school or a new sport complex or commercial corridor, that sort of thing. And really use it as an opportunity to celebrate the unity of this kind of region, or even you might even think about it as kind of two regions that are connected, as well as celebrating the unique characters and features in each of the 7 localities. So both, like, I hear you, Joe, I want there to be a lot of consistency and in the trail, but also recognizing that there's a great story and visual branding in the Hanover section that doesn't make sense in downtown Richmond. And so I think that we can really lean into really celebrating the strengths of each of our locality partners. So if I can share my screen. Well, before I jump into that, so we have the vision plan is in progress to be delivered later this year, October, and we are consulting with Tool Design. We just got done with a 5-day charrette series earlier in May, and we had 70 or 80 individual people come from all 7 localities, from neighborhood groups, nonprofits, land trusts, tree organizations, environmental groups, parks, schools, transportation, planning, economic development, universities, and all to get both like a very granular understanding of different sections of the fall line, like where people were familiar, and we got people drawing on maps, we got people writing in parcel information, recognizing new partnerships or new people we should reach out to. And so what that was meant to do is to compile our first draft, which is not ready. And I should say that we are on track to have a significant presentation from Tool at the Friends of the Fall Line meeting in July. So I'm giving you a quick overview, but you'll see a lot more in detail next month from them. To hear about stories along the way, I learned a lot about Black, African-American, and slave and emancipation history. Like, I knew a lot of what was in the corridor, but I didn't know as much about outside of like kind of downtown Richmond or the central part of the alignment. And there's a real exciting opportunity to connect really important cultural sites along the 43 miles that I don't think people were thinking the fall line would really be a good conduit to do. But I think, you know, through the fall line vision plan, that's one example from hearing at least a dozen people bring up that all the way from Hanover to Virginia State University in Petersburg, there is this really rich historical cultural thread that is a really important thing for us to identify and focus on in some of our placemaking, our signage, et cetera, that I don't think, you know, we were really thinking about 3 years ago. So really, really exciting stuff out of that. But we're not just doing the charrette. We've done a couple of trips. We went to DC in October with a large group. We just got back from Indianapolis about a month ago. Some really key takeaways there that I actually think are maybe warrant even a separate meeting as it relates to the wayfinding effort. But I wanted to show a couple of things that we saw there, just as a little bit of some lessons learned. So I'm going to share my screen if that is okay. And if you've got any questions, please drop them in the chat or raise your hand. So you should be seeing now, this is a bit of a summary of what Tool has provided to us. And it's certainly not final. And it's something that they're still going through the something like 40 different maps that we all leaned into and contributed to. So we have a couple of different themes here. We've got important crossings, and some of that is like for sort of a safety perspective, but some of it is also crossings that would get you to additional things, so more of a navigation kind of thing. Different destinations. Some of them are ones that you come to mind all the time, like Green City. Others you might not think about, and these are sort of just summaries. The history ones were really interesting, and I know Plain RVA has been working on the trolley line and the rail history part of that for a number of years now. Gabriel's Rebellion. Jackson Ward is a rich historical center. This is interesting. Industrial history doesn't really get that a lot of enough detail, but you know, the history of ironwork in America has a significant history in around the James River and the Appomattox. Actually, there are existing millworks at the southern end of the fall line now. So you can sort of see part of what we're looking at here, or sort of the breadth of what we're looking at, and you can imagine how many Post-it notes we've had to go through. Different opportunities for needs and different character changes. And one of the things that we heard loud and clear, you know, when we think about art, we think about placemaking. One of the things that like just pops into my head is the chrome bean in Chicago. And I was like, one of the questions that I would ask people is, if we were going to have a chrome bean, one, what could it be? And two, like, because we don't want to just copy Chicago, but where would it go? Like, where should some sculpture gardens or corporate art or that kind of placemaking go? And I heard loud and clear from Hanover that you love tomatoes, but you don't want a big chrome tomato. I was like, I did my best to get that one in there. But there is an opportunity to really have subtle placemaking and art in Hanover that is reminiscent of the rural character and the trail, or trail being a conversion of a trolley line, and lots of great opportunity to really lean into that, where and a different example down at the new or soon to be developed Goods Creek Park, which is the Broad Rock Creek Park in the southern portion of the city, is going to be a new park where the trail leaves the very likely to leave the road and have more of a park-like setting in a brand new kind of place. Is there an opportunity for a sculpture garden there, for mural art, for maybe even like interactive elements like public art that gets turned over every month? So we have like regular programming for people to paint and use the trail in a way that's not just biking long distances, but is instead to get people to a place that they would use for, you know, other reasons. And that's sort of the overview of what was covered largely by the charrettes. And so what kind of character does each locality sort of value, and where should we be thinking about where trail conflicts could be? How can we use the trail to catalyze existing efforts from history, heat island effect, connections to schools, creating active transportation connections to communities that don't currently have them, thinking about where people might use it for recreation versus transportation, or getting connections to transit. Got tons of feedback along all of those. And what our next step is with this is not just the summary of the inputs, but some summary recommendations that would be the draft plan that we'll show in July. While I'm on this slide, as it relates to sort of the feedback that we got, do you have any questions, or are there any things that you think that should be highlighted in the way that we're doing this, or things that really need to be in the vision plan that maybe didn't show up, or if you had like a second thought after your charrette participation? I'm happy to entertain comments.
Brantley, this is Chet. I'm just thinking back to the wayfinding plan, and the stuff you just shared on the screen is great. Is there even if it's not finalized, like a draft list of the destinations or resources that people thought were priorities that we could share with AB Design?
I did just take a note while you were in your presentation that I'd like to get a distilled list from Tool. I haven't asked that specific question, and I think that they should be able to deliver that. This probably warrants a whole meeting so that we can get some parameters about what you'd like. Like, is there a certain number that you'd like, or a certain number per locality, or maybe every certain number of miles? What what kind of places are you looking for? And I think probably we would provide a list that's much richer than you'd be able to sign for, but we can kind of pick the priority ones and get kind of, I think an important thing would be getting a variety and recognizing that my recommendation, just going through that process, and I was able to engage in 4 of those 5 days, is that for the fall line to really be realized to its highest potential, it is to not just think about it as a recreational trail, and it's going to be a way for people to interact with our region in a way they never have before. There's so many things, like it's a very rich and deep place to go. To think that they will actually use it as a way to experience the region in a way that they haven't before. Like someone who lives in the city of Richmond now has a reason to go north or south to study something or to experience an outdoor environment for the environment itself and not just for the trail, which I think is very much like the Capitol Trail environment, which I love, and nothing but great things to say about the Capitol Trail. I think most people would use it because it is the trail, and there's not as much to do once you get outside of the developed areas. I think we want to kind of turn that over for this one. So happy to get a draft list of things destinations for your plan.
Thanks.
And back to following the wayfinding comment, I'm going to share my screen again and share a few. We actually should really put a presentation together for this for the next Friends of the Fall Line meeting. It's worth more than the time that I've been allotted today. But I wanted to show just a couple of pictures of us in Indianapolis and some of the takeaways about what really high quality placemaking and wayfinding, what it looks like and what it can do. And see, I know Dirana was on that trip. I don't know if anyone else on the trip is on this call. I don't think so. But we went to Indianapolis for one primary reason, is that it's one of the model trails for our initial concept of the Fall Line, is that it is a 8-mile ring within Indianapolis that has some spurs that come off of it now, so it looks a little bit more like an amoeba. And then it's at the heart of their regional trail network. They've been building more trails, but the primary way to think about it is there is a multi-use trail like the Capitol Trail that goes between downtown Indianapolis and smaller towns in the periphery and through the suburbs. And that more regional trail network looks a lot like the Virginia Capitol Trail. It is the trail is fairly I don't want to say plain, but it's not extremely decorated. It's kind of, it's on a rail bed. But in the areas of activity or development, they have really leaned into significant wayfinding, wider than minimum trail widths. Very often, pedestrian is separated from the trail or from what you might call biking part of the trail in order to have extra width, and also forecasting where pedestrian and bike conflicts might be, adding additional width from a safety measure, and also recognizing that there are front doors to businesses throughout this area. So there needs to be room for people to open business doors and street furniture. So one of the most excellent things, and I'd love to hear if you if this tracks or doesn't for you, Dirana, but they used very consistent contrasting crosswalks, so branded, colorful crosswalks throughout the entire alignment of the Indianapolis Cultural Trail, over 8 miles. And what it does is it prevents you from being able to get lost. You absolutely know when you're on the Indianapolis Cultural Trail and not one of the many other trails that connects to it. They brand every single one of them. They brand their signage. I have a couple more pictures to share about what the signage looks like. It is high quality, and they made the intentional choice early on to commit to the quality so that you know exactly how to use it, and recognizing that Indianapolis gets a lot of visitors. It is really hard to use it in a way that's not designed for. Should be able to change pictures here.
Yeah, I agree with Brantley. The experience was really cool. I don't know if we're gonna have the type of money to do some of it, whether that be initial construction or maintenance. But they did have a substantial endowment for maintenance. So there's a lot of things that we have to consider when looking to, how fancy we can get. But we do hope to take some of those elements to really give that sense of trail through the different localities for the fall line. So yeah, it was very informative. I think, Terrell, the public works director from Henrico, was there, and there were a lot of takeaways that other Richmond staff and others had. So it was really cool. And
There's
just
one picture I'm looking for that would share up close on some of the,
the signage or the. Brantley, are you still looking? I'll be frozen. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I think Brantley's frozen. Just till we get him back, do any other members have any comments or updates that they would like to share? No, we're running long. I'm pushing into my next meeting. All right, any future topics? Everybody's ready to go. I'm trying to wait for Brantley.
Yeah, it looks like he actually dropped off.
Okay, yeah, I thought it froze. Well, we're gonna get off of here before he comes back. I'm just joking. I love Brantley for the sake of time. No, really, does anyone have any comments? We'll definitely set up some time. I wrote for the future topics. We'll get a little bit more. Maybe we can have some meshing between, Phil and Chet's, the wayfinding, and then the vision plan. Because it does seem like they're great efforts in coming together. We're gonna have something good and great. So I'm excited. Okay, so with that, sorry, Brantley. If there's no additional questions, our next meeting is set for July 5th. I guess we're holding to that day after the 4th of July. But we'll check out our vacation schedules around then and see if that still stands or if it needs to be rescheduled for later in July, but we should be good. If there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.